The relatively sparse population of the area in this time is often cited as one of the justifications for the establishment of Israel and the Zionist movement. And I'm wondering if you find that compelling, or just the way that you looked, it seems like you think I might have
I've never heard it cited as a justification. What the Zionists said was the land isn't fully inhabited, so there is room for more people.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah. It's not justification. That's not really a justification of Zionism. Zionism had other pieces of justification. But they said, well, there's a lot of empty land here. Why can't we also live here alongside Arabs? That was the Zionist argument at the time. But let me add something else here. We're talking about the creation of the Palestinian refugee problem in 1948. One must remember there were three refugee problems created by the 1948 war. The one which we talk about all the time, the Arab refugee problem, we talk about because it still exists. And the numbers, of course, have grown geometrically because the children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren of the refugees from 1948 are recognized by the international community, meaning the United Nations, as refugees, which is, of course, unique in the history of the world, that later generations also get the benefits and the title or identity of refugees. This has happened there. But that refugee problem exists, and therefore we talk about the Palestinian refugee problem. Two other refugee problems were created by the 1948 war. 70,000 Jews were uprooted from their homes in the course of the war. Now, you may think 70,000 is not many. It's a small number as compared to 700,000 Palestinians. But 70,000 represented more than 10% of the Jewish population of Palestine in 1948. There were 650,000 Jews in Palestine. That's what we're talking about. Fighting 1.3 million Palestinians and tens of millions of Arabs. Those 70,000 who were uprooted from their homes represented over 10% of the Jewish population of Palestine at the time. If America, for instance, was invaded or whatever, and you had 10% of Americans becoming refugees, you would have 35 million American refugees. So 70,000 for the Jews in 1948 while fighting a war for existence was a considerable refugee problem. That refugee problem vanished by the end of the war because Israel recaptured the sites from where these refugees had emerged. In other words, Jewish settlements which had been taken or abandoned under Arab attack were resettled by these people, and the Jewish refugee problem in Palestine vanished by the end of the war, no longer exists after 1949. The third refugee problem which the war engendered was the refugeedom of the Jewish communities who had lived for hundreds and even thousands of years in the Arab states. These were all basically pushed out in the course of the years 1948, 1964. And we're talking about 700,000 to 800,000 Jews who had lived in Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, Egypt, Syria, Yemen, Iraq. All of these Jews essentially left the Arab world under social pressure and under serious governmental pressure, which actually was oppression, beginning with the Jews of Yemen, the Jews of Iraq. All of them left these countries in vast numbers. Most of them ended up in Israel, became citizens of Israel, and their refugeedom ended. And some of them ended up in England and France. What this means is those 700,000 or 800,000 Jews were essentially pushed out from the Arab world, which by societies which identified these Jews with the Zionist project, and therefore they regarded them as potential enemies, if not actual enemies. They no longer exist as refugees. They no longer remain refugees, unlike the Palestinian refugees who weren't properly absorbed, didn't return to their homes, and the Palestinian refugee problem remains to this day.
Yeah, it is interesting that these two non-Palestinian refugee problems, which sound, if you quoted like 70,000 and 800,000, they outnumber the Palestinian refugees, but this is not discussed ever, and then two, their refugee status is not hereditary in the way.
But they're not there because they stopped being refugees. So they couldn't pass it down the generations. It's worth pointing out, though, to something else. The Palestinian refugees, unlike the Jewish refugees from Arab lands, want to return to their homes and lands in Palestine, which became Israel. The Jewish refugees from the Arab states do not want to go back to the dictatorships and failed societies which are the Arab world today.
Well, then that's maybe a good reason not to be talking about it as much.
Yes, they no longer exist as refugees.
Right.
Though some Israelis of, for instance, of Moroccan origin, do go back to visit where their families came from. They like Moroccan food and so on. Most, of course, of the refugees from Iraq, from Egypt, well, not Egypt, Iraq, Syria, and so on, can't go back and have a look and as tourists from where they came. The countries don't allow these Israelis of Syrian or Iraqi origin to go back there. But the Moroccan Jews do often go to Morocco and visit the place. That is descendants of those Moroccan Jews to see what it was like.